Do you believe it? Just one man dared to challenge one of the mightiest empires in all of Asia. From a minor official, he cast aside his seal of office. Then he turned his back on the very power that once nurtured him, and chose the most dangerous path of all, to stand against the Liang dynasty. Why did he do it? What could make a man rise up when everyone else stayed silent? And how, in just 3 months, could his rebel army make an entire colonial machine tremble and collapse piece by piece? This is not just the story of an uprising. This is the moment history changed the destiny of a nation. If you think you already know everything about the vanished empires, get ready. Because what comes next will make you see history in a way you never have before. Hit subscribe right now, so you don't miss the journey as we uncover the secrets of the ancient world together. The 6th century. Jiaozhou was not the peaceful land many imagine. It was carved into 7 districts, each under the harsh rule of the Liang dynasty. The people were drained by crushing taxes and forced labor. Fields lay abandoned. Families were torn apart. The cries of children mingled with the groans of those dragged into servitude. But the greatest tragedy was not only exploitation. It was the so-called aristocratic clan system, a ruthless order where only noble families held the right to govern. Everyone else, no matter how talented, was forever branded as lowborn, crushed beneath the heel of power. An entire society split in two. On one side, a privileged few lived in luxury. On the other, millions of people sank into darkness. Imagine it. The people treated like weeds. Even the native nobility were cast aside from the machinery of power. Resentment swelled without end, like a hidden storm waiting to break. And then, in that darkness, the first sparks appeared. Whispers rose around the hearth. Small groups gathered in the night. Their eyes burned bright whenever they spoke of 2 words, freedom. They did not only despise the crushing taxes. They did not only curse the aristocratic order. They also saw a chance to change everything. The Liang Empire seemed invincible. But in the very heart of Jiaozhou, the seeds of rebellion grew stronger each day. All it needed was one person with enough courage to rise. All it needed was a single banner raised high, and the whole land would erupt. And that man was Libi. The fury was no longer silent. It erupted, fierce and unstoppable, like a volcano ready to explode. The people across Jiaozhou had endured enough. Crushing taxes, stolen lands, and human lives valued only as offerings to corrupt officials. Countless families destroyed. Countless drops of blood spilled onto the fields. But what turned this fury into a storm was humiliation. The aristocratic order despised human worth. Anyone outside noble bloodlines was forever cast aside. No matter their talent, they were treated like garbage. An entire nation ranked beneath the feet of foreign rulers. And from that humiliation, one question burned in every heart: why must we bow our heads? At that moment, Libi, a man once within the machinery of power, saw it all. He had worn the robes of office, he had commanded troops. But he had also watched his own people suffer before his very eyes. Frustration slowly hardened into resolve. Libi resigned his post. He returned to his homeland. He began to gather the brave and the bold. One by one. Group by group. Each like a fragment of the storm waiting to be unleashed. This was not merely an uprising for bread and survival. This was a cry arising from the depths of history. This nation must have its sovereignty. And the question for you, the one watching this video: if you had lived in that moment, would you bow your head or rise up? Don't miss the next episode, where the banner of rebellion is raised for the very first time. And if you want to journey with me through the most epic, tragic, and heroic chapters of ancient history, hit subscribe now. Because what comes next will be even more dramatic. At first, they were only whispers in the dark. Small gatherings, secret meetings by the fire, eyes burning in the night. People everywhere listened. From dispossessed farmers to the tribal chiefs of the mountains. All shared the same suffering, and now they shared the same hope. Liang was not alone. He sought out local heroes, names that would one day become legend. Tin Thieu, Pham Tu, Tru Tuc and his son, Tru Quang Phuc. They were not just leaders. They were flames. And when Liang came, those flames roared into an inferno. Day by day, thousands of volunteers arrived. Villagers offered food and supplies. Blacksmiths hammered day and night, forging weapons. Fields turned into training grounds. The darkness became the place where oaths were sworn. It was no longer just rage. It had become a movement. A tidal wave, rising higher, ready to sweep away the yoke of domination. Can you imagine? A retired official, in just a few short months, transforming into the supreme commander of tens of thousands. A force more powerful than anything seen since the days of the Trung sisters. When the banner of rebellion first unfurled, was all of Jiaozhou ready to quake? And how would the enemy, with its vast colonial machine, strike back? January 542. The banner of rebellion soared into the sky. Drums thundered, gongs clashed, and the cries of thousands split the night. By dawn, the columns of insurgents were already on the march. The first strike was more than a battle. It was a declaration. A signal to all of Jiaozhou, the time to rise has come. In just 3 months, Liang's forces swept from victory to victory. They seized fortress after fortress. They crushed garrison after garrison. Nowhere could the Liang troops stand firm. Long Bien, the very heart of the colonial regime, became the final target. Imagine it, a fortress thought unbreakable, now trembling under the footsteps of tens of thousands of rebels. The governor, Tu Tu, panicked. He dared not resist. And then the unthinkable happened. He gathered his gold and silver, bribed for his own escape, and fled to Guangzhou. Rarely in history has a vast colonial machine collapsed so swiftly. The insurgents did not merely win. They shook the very foundations of Liang power in Jiaozhou. But that moment raised a darker question. Was this only a fleeting triumph, or the dawn of a new era? Could Liang truly hold independence, when the enemy would surely return with vengeance? If you want to witness the rest of this blood-soaked journey, hit subscribe now. Because even fiercer battles are still to come. After a wave of victories that shook the whole of Jiaozhou, the land itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. And then, history arrived. February 544. Amid the thunder of drums, the banners, and tens of thousands of rebels kneeling in unison, Liang ascended the throne. He declared himself Liang. A new national title was born, Van Xuân. That name was no accident. Van Xuân means eternal spring. A promise that this people would never again sink into the endless night of slavery. A proclamation that Vietnam had at last become an independent nation after more than 5 centuries of foreign domination. The Van Tho Palace rose along the banks of the Talich River, now the beating heart of a new country. The court was organized in the style of the great feudal dynasties, but there was no trace of foreign rule here. This was a court of the Vietnamese, by the Vietnamese, for the Vietnamese. Liang did not merely take the throne. He built faith. Faith that this nation could govern itself, decide its own destiny, and stand tall before the colossal empires of the north. Pause for a moment and picture it. A former official, cast aside, who once resigned in frustration, now the first emperor in Vietnam's history since the Trung sisters. Do you see the extraordinary weight of that moment? But history is never kind. Glory, once raised, is always tested. And the northern enemy, the Liang dynasty, would never accept losing this land. But do you think the Liang dynasty would simply sit back and let Jiaozhou slip away? No. To them, this was more than just a piece of land. It was a strategic prize, a golden gateway into Southeast Asia. The year 545. The Liang struck back with brutal force. Not one, but two mighty armies thundered down from the north. A whirlwind of steel. A storm of blood and fire. Villages went up in flames. Rivers ran red with the blood of rebels. Everywhere, the screams of the dying mixed with the chilling cries of war horses. And here lay the tragedy. Liang, the man who had just raised the dream of Van Xuân, was now pushed to the brink of destruction. He and his followers retreated deep into the mountains, clinging to hope against a storm that seemed unstoppable. Picture it. A young emperor, less than 2 years on the throne, now fighting in the misty forests, struggling just to preserve the last fragile spark of independence. The Liang would show no mercy. They wanted to crush the dream of the eternal spring before it could even take root. To them, this was more than war. It was a warning to any people daring to rise against them. Yet there was one truth the invaders could never understand. The Vietnamese could lose a battle. They could lose a city. But they would never surrender. And in those darkest days, another light flickered. A new hero emerged, ready to carry forward the flame of resistance lit by Liang. Who was the man that stepped out of the shadows to keep Van Xuân alive? The answer will send chills down your spine. Stay with us to uncover the next chapter of this story. And don't forget to hit subscribe, so you don't miss the secrets still hidden behind this epic struggle. Amid the storm of blood and fire, when the dream of Van Xuân seemed shattered to pieces, one man emerged. His name was Quang Phục, a name etched deep into the memory of the nation. Unlike any leader before him, Quang Phục chose a daring path, not head-on confrontation, but vanishing into the swamps and wetlands, making the night his armor, the floodwaters his fortress. Can you picture it? Surprise raids cloaked in heavy mist. Massive Liang battalions, once thought unstoppable, struck down by warriors who slipped in and out like shadows. The people called him intrigue, the king of the marshes, a living symbol of indomitable resistance. Through months of brutal struggle, the Liang soldiers grew exhausted, drained of their strength and spirit. Meanwhile, the rebel forces grew stronger, their fire burning ever brighter. And then, the unthinkable happened. From a man cornered to the brink of despair, Quang Phục turned the tide. He did not just endure. He counterattacked. He drove back the mightiest army of the north. This was no longer a mere uprising. It was a living declaration that the Vietnamese could be driven into the swamps, forced to fight in the shadows, but they would never disappear. The reign of Quang Phục was not simply a continuation of Liang. It was proof that even when one generation falls, another will rise. Defiant, unyielding, unquenchable. But was that strength enough to keep Van Xuân alive against the next waves of invasion? Or would history once again bend toward tragedy? Don't look away. Stay with us as we uncover the final chapter of this epic saga. And if you want this journey to echo louder, to spread further, hit subscribe right now. There are dynasties that flicker briefly in the chronicles of history. There are names of nations that last only a few decades. But there are dreams that live on for 1,000 years. Van Xuân was such a dream. Even though the dynasty of Liang collapsed, even though Quang Phục held the nation for only a short time, the flame they lit never went out. Think about it. A small people, crushed under the weight of a massive empire like the Liang, still dared to rise. Still dared to shout the word independence. And most importantly, they turned that longing into reality, if only for a fleeting moment in history. That moment was enough to plant a seed. The seed of belief. That the Vietnamese could master their own destiny. That one day, the name Van Xuân would become eternal. That is why, for centuries afterward, from No Nguyen, Din Bo Lin, Lu Hon, to Lai Thuan Kit and Tran Hung Dao, all carried that same flame in their hearts. The flame first kindled by Lai Bi and Tru Quang Phuc. Do you see it? Even when the name Van Xuân vanished from the map, it still lived within the people. It became an immortal symbol, a message passed down to every generation. We may fall, but we will never bow. And today, as you hear this story once more, you are not only looking into the past. You are touching the heart of a dream that has never faded. If you believe this flame deserves to burn brighter, to reach further, leave your mark, like, share, and subscribe. Because it is you who will help the dream of Van Xuân echo into our own age. History is not just faded pages in an old book. It is the breath of our ancestors. It is the voice that echoes from the past, reminding us that even the smallest nation can create miracles. Lai Bi and the heroes of Van Xuân achieved the impossible. They planted the seed of belief that the Vietnamese could stand tall on their own feet. And from that dream, a 1,000-year journey began. Can you feel it? The clash of swords, the thunder of war drums, the vows shouted beneath the stars. They still resonate today. Not as memories long gone, but as an immortal promise. Van Xuân may have faded into the chronicles of history, but the spirit of Van Xuân still flows in the veins of every Vietnamese. Each generation, each heart, is living proof that the dream of independence never dies. And if right now you feel that flame rising within you, then join us in spreading it. Like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any journey into the empires that vanished, but whose spirit lives forever. Because history is only truly immortal when there are voices left to tell it.